In part one of our PowerPoint on this module, we talked about Class A through Class E and G airspace, which is basically ATC procedures when you're getting into busy airports. And again, Class B, here it looks like the upside down cake, goes up to 10,000 feet. Class C is normally about 4,500 feet, and you can see it goes out farther as you get up in altitude, and closer in as you, and farther down a lower altitude as you get closer to the airport. Again, Charlotte is Class B airspace, and Raleigh would be Class C airspace. Class D airspace is basically an airport traffic area. Class E airspace is other airspace, and basically the main parts of Class E airspace that you would use would be the VFR or Victor Airways. Above 18,000 feet or flight level 180 is your Class A airspace, and you have to have VFR to get up in there. And Class G right here is uncontrolled. The next thing we're going to talk about is specially designated airspace. It's airspace like restricted areas and military operating areas, other areas that are, you can find them on your Charlotte sectional. So after I finish this shot through the PowerPoint, go back and open your Charlotte sectionals and take a look and find the legends and the designations for each of those types of airspace. Probably the one that's going to hit you the most is the restricted airspace, which Fort Bragg, right next to us here, is a huge area of restricted airspace. And we'll talk about each one of those. Okay, a prohibited area has airspace within which the flight of an aircraft is prohibited. It's established for security or national welfare. Places like Washington, D.C., Cape Canaveral during launch operations, big sporting events, those might be prohibited areas. Restricted area is an area that contains airspace where the flight is not wholly prohibited, but it is definitely subject to restrictions. Activities in these areas must be confined due to the existence of unusual, sometimes invisible hazards, such as artillery firing, aerial gunnery, guided missiles. You kind of don't want to find those kind of things while you're flying along. There will be a controlling agency that controls those restricted areas, and if you're VFR, you definitely have to squawk 1200. On the back side of the bottom of your Charlotte sectional, there's a whole list of the contact people for the restricted areas and MOAs and things like that. So you can look right at the bottom of your chart, and it'll be right there. An alert area is established to inform you of non-participating pilots of areas that have a high volume of military pilot training or an unusual type of aerial activities such as para-ops or things like that. All activity in an alert area shall be conducted in accordance with FARs. Around here there's a lot of low-level helicopter operations, and just west of here there is an alert area which contains those. Warning areas extend from 3 nautical miles outward from the coast. Generally, they're off the coast. May contain activity that could be hazardous to non-participating aircraft, and can be located over domestic or international airspace. Controlled firing areas are areas which, if not conducted in a controlled environment, could be hazardous to a non-participating aircraft. CFA or controlled firing areas activities are suspended when radar ground lookouts or spotter aircraft indicate that an aircraft may be approaching the area. MOAs or military operation areas are established for separating certain military training activities from non-participating IFR traffic. Since most military training activities necessitate acrobatic or abrupt flying maneuvers, military pilots in these MOAs are exempt from FARs prohibiting aerobatic flight. VFR pilots should contact flight service stations within 100 miles of a MOA for their operating hours and to see if they're active. Again, on the bottom of your Charlotte sectional, you'll see a whole listing of your MOAs. Military training routes, and this is a question on the test. It's a route by the military to practice high-speed, low-level maneuvers, and that's on your Charlotte sectional as well, generally below 10,000 feet and greater than 250 knots. If you remember your rules, you're supposed to be below 250 knots, below 10,000 feet, but if a military aircraft is training, of course, if they're doing a low level, they can go faster than that. And they should stay on their military training route, or MTR. IFR, VFR traffic are not prohibited from flying along the route, but should contact flight service within 100 miles of the route to make sure it's not active. All military training routes have been assigned a unique designator composed of 2 letters and either 3 or 4 numbers. So, the 2 letters inform the pilot of the type of the route it is, VR or IR. That means they're going to be flying VFR visual rules or instrument rules, IFR separation. It's like if you're training IFR. And the number of digits inform the pilots of the altitude at which these operations will be conducted. So 3 digits is both the below and above 1500 AGL, and 4 digits is at or below 1500 AGL. TFRs, or temporary flight restrictions, may be issued by the FAA whenever an incident or accident has occurred and has a potential for attracting a number of aircraft, rubberneckers, that might cause a hazard to those attempting to make a rescue. For example, fires, earthquakes, aircraft accidents, hurricanes. Those things, they may put a temporary flight restriction if we had a big hurricane on the coast, if they were doing big aerial relief efforts. FAA notifies pilots of TFRs through NOTAMs and through FAA controlling facilities, militaries, and airlines. Now, NOTAM will contain the information pertaining to the actual location, dimensions, duration of the temporary flight restriction, and the information of which the aircraft are permitted to operate within the TFR. Generally, if you're above 2,000 AGL, and 2 to 3 nautical miles around the site, you're okay. Aircraft that may operate within the TFR is if they're actually aiding in the disaster relief, and IFR aircraft that if they are properly cleared by air traffic control. The federal airways themselves are basically airways between 2 nav aids, and it provides routes between NDBs, or mostly VORs. And there are 2 types. The colored airway is using NDBs and 4 course radio ranges for navigation. They're really no longer in use except in Canada and Alaska. And then there's the VORs, which we call the Victor Airways for the V. VOR airway is still used for low altitude or jet routes. And then low altitude airways are described in Part 71. And they utilize both high and low altitude VORs. They are assigned a distinct number, like Victor 105, always with the letter V first. Low altitude airways extend from 1,200 feet up to flight level 180, or 18,000 MSL, and extend 4 miles laterally either side of the center line. Jet routes now are above flight level 180, or 18,000 MSL, up to and including flight level 450, or 45,000 feet. They are identified on high altitude IFR charts with a prefix of J. And they, again, are depicted as light blue lines. You won't see them on the Charlotte sectionals. Airport advisory area is the area within 10 statute miles of an airport where a control tower is not operating, such as Moore County Airport. But there is a FSS located at that airport, but not here. It's not mandatory, but strongly recommended that a pilot participate in the airport advisory. It's not depicted on the chart. TRSA, Terminal Radar Service Area, is where you can get picked up on radar. The only one I can think of around here is Wilmington has a TRSA. And again, it is established as part of the terminal radar program at selected airports. They're not considered control airspace and are not governed by Part 71. The primary airport within the TIRSA is considered to be in Class D airspace, which is just the airport traffic area. But the remaining portion of the TIRSA is designated like a miniature Class B airspace. So it can go from 700 AGL up to 1200 AGL, and it is officially Class E airspace, just like Victor Airways. VFR pilots are encouraged but not required to contact radar approach during or entering that Class D airspace. VFR pilots must contact the tower, of course, anytime you're entering the airport traffic area or that Class D airspace. On the charts, it's a solid black line on your Charlotte sectional, and the altitudes it'll show you for each segment. All right, any questions? Again, you can go over the questions on the PowerPoint. Review that from your Moodle, and I won't go through this anymore. And if you have any questions concerning the entire PowerPoint, go ahead and email me. All right.